Today we are making Pesto Rosso Lasagna. So you've probably had pesto that is green, made with basil, Parmesan, garlic, all that good stuff. Today we are making Pesto Rosso, red pesto, that is going to mimic this sort of color and consistency of a tomato sauce, but it is made with sun-dried tomatoes, so it really concentrates that tomato flavor, and from there, we're gonna get wild and crazy. So I've got about 2 cups of sun-dried tomatoes. These were packed in olive oil. I just drained off a little bit of the oil, but left some of it in there. You're gonna add more olive oil. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, sun-dried tomatoes are these wonderfully concentrated little bursts of tomato flavor. To that mix, I'm going to add, let's do 2 cloves of garlic. Now you definitely do not have to do this because everything's going into the food processor and it will all get chopped up together. But I do like to kind of give my garlic a head start by either slicing or rough chopping it before I add it to the food processor. So let me tell you a little story about how my love of Pesto Rosso first began. And it all starts with the most delicious sandwich I've ever had in my life. I was in Sicily with my family, and we were on our way to a farmer's market, which if you know me at all, you know is like my absolute favorite activity in the world. I love nothing more than going to a farmer's market where the produce is hideous but tastes like the purest essence of that fruit. The lemons, the peaches, all of it just perfuming the air. It's beyond. Okay, garlic in, 3 cloves of garlic, those 2 cups of sun-dried tomatoes. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of these capers, and I'm going to add a little bit of brine, not too much. And let's call it 1/3 cup of pine nuts to start with, and maybe 2 tablespoons of currants. You don't want the sauce too sweet, but just these little pops of that juicy berry is delicious. Anyway, so we're at the farmer's market and we're wandering around, and all of a sudden we round a corner and there is a 40-person line down the block going to this one stand. So obviously we go to the front of the line to see what this commotion is about. And I see this tiny little old man, and he makes one thing in his stand. It is a beautiful, nay, a perfect sandwich. Fresh ciabatta bread, spread with a thick slather of pesto rosso, layered with fresh mozzarella, prosciutto, a pile of dressed arugula, dressed with like just a little olive oil and lemon juice, little drizzle of olive oil on top, salt, and then fresh lime zest. So then I went back and got in line and waited for the sandwich, and it was the most spectacular bite of just like the easiest lunch food, but the combination of flavors just blew my mind. So then I fell in love with Pesto Rosso and have been looking for ways to use it more in my life, which is when I realized that the predicament of noodles and sauce coming apart in a lot of lasagnas made me think that Pesto Rosso would be the right move, because it's a much stickier, thicker glossing on the noodles. It's not gonna run away from you quite as easily. Okay, so we have all of our good stuff in here. I'm going to start with maybe a 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan. You can definitely do by hand, but I'm saving myself a little bit of time. Another lovely piece of this condiment is it doesn't involve any cooking. You're literally just gonna pulverize everything together in your food processor or mortar and pestle and be done. Okay, so once you have all the nuts and the currants, the capers, garlic, everything, sun-dried tomatoes, all pulverized together, I'm gonna start drizzling in my olive oil now just to give us a slightly more smooth consistency. Okay, and I do want a little extra salt. I just have a feeling. One last pulse. Gorgeous. You can see how incredibly thick this sauce is. Really substantial, so many flavors coming around. Oh, I forgot the anchovies. Shoot, I was like, oh, I get the capers, I get the sweetness of the currants. Where's my umami? I forgot about the anchovies. Okay, so we're gonna grab a few of these bad boys, and like I did with the garlic, I'm just gonna give them a rough chop just to help them incorporate better now that my sauce is basically done otherwise. And don't be afraid that you're gonna get a pungent bite of anchovy. It really disappears into the sauce with the tiniest bit of flavor. Last time. Okay. We should be in business now. Delicious. Okay, your Pesto Rosso is ready to go. Let's make some béchamel, that wonderful creamy sauce that gives lasagna so much rich mouth appeal. and is going to help balance out some of the like tartness and acidity coming through from the pesto rosso. Milk, flour, butter, that's what we need. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is measure out about 5 cups of whole milk. So we're just gonna set our milk over a medium heat. We want it to come up and get nice and warm. That's gonna help make sure that the bechamel sauce is really smooth and creamy, no clumping. Meanwhile, we're gonna make a roux, which is an equal parts combination of melted butter, 5 tablespoons, and 5 tablespoons of flour. We are making a blonde roux, meaning we're not going to let it get a lot of color. So I'm starting by just melting the butter down, and that is going to help the fat coat our flour. We're going to cook all the rawness out of the flour, let it get coated in the fat, and then use our warm milk to start to build this deliciously creamy sauce. So once you are at this lovely blonde color, very creamy, very rich looking, we can start to add in our milk, which you can see is steaming perfect. And then you want to slowly start to add your milk into the roux, a cup at a time. You can see how lovely and smooth those first 2 additions have gotten. I'm gonna add the next bit of our milk. So I'm going to continue stirring this every now and then, let this bechamel cook about 8 minutes. You'll see the sauce gets really thick. And while the bechamel is cooking, I'm going to drop into salted boiling water our lasagna noodles. Ooh, get in there. So I have our noodles going in heavily salted boiling water. We're gonna cook them a little bit shy of the package instructions because obviously these noodles are gonna get layered with our gorgeous pesto rosso and bechamel sauce and then go back in the oven and roast. All right, lasagna noodles are ready. I'm gonna go ahead and drain them. And for once in your life, you actually don't need to save the pasta water. Now that the noodles are cooked, I'm going to drizzle just a tiny bit of olive oil over top. This is not something I do in any other pasta preparation, but because we need them to not stick to each other while we get ready to do layer by layer, this is the best way to give them a little bit of a glossing coating. And even though they're greased, I do still want to lay them out here on a baking tray just to keep the noodles separate. And the reason I don't put olive oil on any other pasta prep before the sauce is because it does make the noodles a little bit slippery, which in our lasagna case we want because we don't want them to stick together while we plan our layers out. In other preps, you want the starchiness at the surface of the pasta to be there, which is why you don't want to rinse your pasta, you don't want to gloss it with olive oil, because the starchiness is what helps to hold on to the sauce and coat it beautifully. All right, now the fun part, get to layer up our lasagna. So the first step is just to grease your casserole dish with a bit of softened butter. Now the first layer in this lasagna is just gonna be a thin coating of the bechamel sauce, and then a few overlapping layers of noodles. And now we're gonna go layer of bechamel, layer of pesto rosso, that I am just going to give a quick spread just to smooth it all together. Sprinkle of Parmesan cheese, and do it all again. So at this point, you're really just like painting by numbers, pasta by numbers. Definitely something you can get your kids to help you with. The pasta noodles are nice and cool now, easy to touch, obviously. And by the way, you'll notice these corners are starting to curve up at the edges. That plus the butter on our dish is going to guarantee 4 very lucky favorite people of yours are going to get a gorgeous crispy corner. Okay, for our final layer of lasagna. Last little bit of bechamel, final little slick of pesto rosso, and then give it your best effort at one last final smoothing. Plenty of beautiful cheese. I'm gonna grab some tin foil and wrap this up, and it's going in a 375-degree oven, 30-35 minutes. We'll take the foil off, let it go under the broiler for those final couple minutes so you really get that gorgeous golden brown crispy coating on the top and those corners that are downright crunchable. Okay, to the oven. So while the lasagna is in the oven, I'm going to make a bright green pesto. Very simple, traditional recipe. That is going to be really fun just to drizzle on top as a finishing touch. It will make the resulting colors red and green, very festive, and definitely optional. This lasagna does not need any more flavor. It is so incredible on its own. So if you want to skip this process, do. If you just want to have a quick and easy pesto recipe on hand, here you go. but I find it looks very festive and beautiful. So I have 3 cloves of garlic. I just popped them out of their skin. I'm gonna put those in first and pulverize them so that they start to distribute, and that way we don't have to over chop once I add the basil. So then I'm gonna add in my pine nuts, which works out perfectly to about 1/3 of a cup. I'm also going to add in my Parmesan cheese. Sometimes I like to do a combo of Parmesan and Pecorino cheese. Pecorino is a sheep's milk cheese, a lot like Parm, but it has a slightly saltier, creamier, more like almost acidic, tangy bite to it. And then once your pine nuts and Parmesan and garlic are all crumbled together, you don't need to do anything else because this is literally heaven on earth. That pressed onto a beautiful Italian baguette with a little olive oil. Game over. Yep. Spicy from the garlic. Whoa. Ooh, we could add a little chili flake. By the way, one thing I didn't put in my pesto rosso would have been a Fresno chili or some chili flake. If you like it spicy, definitely do that. Tiny pinch of salt. There's plenty of salt coming through from the Parmesan. And now I'm going to add in my beautiful whole leaves of basil. I like to add in a little bit of the stems, just the very soft, tender parts that come off easily with these leaves. I am gonna leave behind woodier stems like so that just don't have a lot of great flavor to them. Once we pulverize all of this together, we will add some olive oil and make a lovely paste. Pesto. So once it gets right, like that level of crumbliness is when I start to drizzle in the olive oil. Oh my gosh, look at this color. So fresh with all that gorgeous basil. That color means that the leaves haven't been too damaged. You haven't over chopped the pesto, which, you know, barring making this by hand in a mortar and pestle, which is the real traditional way and so beautiful to watch and so delicious to eat. This is an almost by hand level of result. Okay, let's taste it, make sure that we know of what we speak. We know of what we speak. Delicious. Wait for the lasagna to be done, let it cool, serve it up. Let's do it. So I took the tin foil off, let the lasagna continue to cook a few minutes uncovered, and then popped it under the broiler. The smell in here. Wow, wow, wow. Perfuming my home with garlic and tomato and crispy corned wonders. Oh my gosh. It's still talking to me. I would say the most important rule of perfect lasagna is waiting after it's done cooking, like 10 to 15 minutes, just to let all the juices recombine, let everything settle, and really enjoy lasagna at its peak. So now we wait just a few minutes. You can do it, okay? We let it rest. Let's cut in. Make sure you go all the way to the bottom and all the way to the edge. You can see it's really holding together beautifully. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lasagna that holds together. No slipping and sliding of your sauce. And then grab a little scoop of your vibrant green pesto and scoop that over top. The moment of truth. Oh, yum. Wow. You know what's crazy? It has anchovies, but other than that, this is a totally meat-free vegetarian moment. It tastes so meaty. Like the sauce, it has chew to it. It has so many layers of textures. The noodles are cooked perfectly, and each of them has like, it's bursting with tomato flavor. If you feel like really going overboard, just go ahead and scatter a little Pecorino right on top or Parmesan right on top, but you do not need it because every layer of the sauce, I literally have 3 sauces with cheese in this lasagna plus a cheese layer. So life is good. Look at that melting cheese layer. Get a little pesto right on top. It's rich, it's easy, it feeds a crowd, keeps everyone happy. And I will tell you, it is as good fresh as it is cold, left over by the light of the refrigerator. I think you should dare.